G'day everybody, Nick Dingle here with the third part of our virtual reality tower defense game. This time we're going to be focusing purely on getting this little guy, the enemy, working and up and running, doing most of what he can do. At the end of the previous video, we sort of left off where we were shooting bullets at him and trying to hurt him, but because there was no script set up to receive that message of hurt from our bullet, which if I scroll down, there it is, sending a message hurt with the damage, then that meant that there was an error, because there was nobody to receive that message. So the majority of our work is going to be done in an enemy script, and we're going to start off by doing that right now. And we're going to set up the health system, then we'll set up a health bar, and then we'll work on getting the money working, so receiving money from those enemies, and then finally getting sort of a waypoint system working for them as well, so they can move around the world. So in this step, I'm just going to right click down here. We're going to create a C# script. We're going to call it enemy, and I'm keeping it a fairly generic name, and that is because reload. What's going on here? There we go. Okay, I'm keeping it a fairly generic script name purely because you can use this with a number of enemies, but we're setting them up to be sort of melee enemies, ground enemies, you could probably call them. So they're going to be walking around the map. Okay, they won't be flying over anything or shooting anything as well. So we'll start off with the health system, and right at the top we need a couple of variables. So the first one we're going to create is a public float health equal 20f because it's a float. And so that's just going to be how much health do they start with, okay? And I just chose 20 because that includes 4 hits, I think, from my current turret. It's just an easy way to test a few things. The second thing we need is just a float, and I call that current health. And I don't worry about equaling that to anything because we're going to make current health the health value straight away when the game starts, okay? And in fact, we're going to set that up now. I'm going to get rid of that comment. Change start to awake like I usually do, and get rid of this bad boy. So in awake, we just do one line of code, and that is current health equals health. So when the game starts, that's how much health we have, 20 at the very beginning. Obviously, you can change that in the editor for every type of enemy you have. The second thing we do is create our hurt function. Okay, so we can actually use the health. So to do that, we go public void hurt. That's how we actually use the message that was sent to us. You just name it the same way as the message name in the bullet script. In brackets, we have to specify another variable, which is float damage, and the name doesn't have to match, but it's matching up to this right here, because we've got a function called hurt and we're setting in a number. That number has to go somewhere. The number is going to go straight into here. Okay? Right. Now, what are we going to do in this function? Pretty straightforward. We're going to hurt the enemy first. And to do that, we just go current health minus equals, so take away damage. Yeah, and I think the default was 5, so it's going to take away 5 damage each time. The second thing we need to do is check if the enemy has no health left. So if current health is less than or equal to 0, then what are we going to do? We're going to destroy the game object. Whoop, little g. Okay, and that'll destroy our enemy. Okay, it's as simple as that. That's all we have to do for the moment. I might put a little quick comment in here. Did we die? Simple as that. All right. So if I play now, we should have 20 health at the beginning. Each time we get shot, we lose 5 health. And when we get shot 4 times, we're at 0, so we're going to die. Okay, so we'll try that out quickly. Go back to project for a sec. What the heck? Get back. There we go. Taking its time. Oh, I forgot. Probably the most important step. That was a bit silly. Put the script on the enemy and apply your changes up the top. Okay, so it gets the script on it. All right. Now, it's 2 bullets at the beginning. 3, 4. And you can see the tower stops shooting and we don't get any errors because he no longer has a target to shoot at. All right. Awesome. That's done. I'm going to delete this little bullet here because I don't want him there to start with. Next thing is we want like a little visual representation of the health bar. So we want to get the health bar on there. So to create that, let's collapse this quickly. I'm going to create this using 3D objects. I was going to use the UI, but then we had to create graphics for the red and the green and different things like that. So what I ended up doing is we create 2 3D objects. We have a green cube and a red cube, and they overlap each other. The green cube is slightly larger, so that way when we shrink down the green cube, you start seeing the red one underneath it. And that way you start seeing the health bar reduce as you go. So what I'm going to do to start creating this is just create an empty object which is going to contain all of this. Create empty here. I'm going to call it health bar. I'm going to set its scale straight away to 0.3, 0. Well, actually, no, I'll leave it at 1s, actually. Forget that for a sec. We'll come back and set that scale at the end. So what I want to do is I'm going to get the red object sitting on there first. So I want the red cube. So I'm going to right click on health bar, go 3D object cube, call this bit not healthy. Right, and the reason I right clicked on the health bar is because I want positions, rotations, and scale to all be default values like this. And if yours isn't, make sure you set it up that way. For this guy, what I want to do is take away the box collider because I don't want him involved in any collision work at all. So he's just a little thing that floats above our enemies. Where are we? Okay, and for the scale for this guy, I chose 2.9 for the length, 0.9 for the height, and 0.9 for the depth. Now, I might change that height quickly to maybe 0.1. That's nice and thin. Okay, and the reason I chose 0.9, 0.1, and 0.9 is because I'm going to make the green one slightly larger on every scale, and that way the green one basically encompasses the red one. So let's go get the red color from my materials, choose the tower, pop it onto him. Okay, I'm going to move the health bar up a little bit. So on this step, that guy's done. We don't have to touch him anymore. So I'm going to right click on health bar and we're going to do the green one. But before we do the green one, I'm going to create another empty game object. And the reason I'm doing this is because right now, that's my pivot right here. I need to turn my camera around because I'm actually backwards here. I don't know how I've managed that. But every object pivots from the middle. And what I want to do, if you scale an object like I'm going to do with the other health bar, you see that it shrinks from left and right at the same time. And I don't want that. I want it to shrink just from the right down to the left. But what I'm going to do is add an empty object to this guy, which basically gives me a different pivot for my green bar. So I'm going to rename this as healthy pivot. And it's actually, whoop, need to put a Y in there. Really important that you get that exact name there because in our script, we're going to be referring to that guy by his name. The healthy pivot. And the only thing we need to do is change his X value here to minus 1.5. And you can see that puts him right on the edge of the red block. So on that note, let us create the green part. So you right click on the pivot, create another cube. This guy is called healthy. Take away the box collider. Set his scale to 3. Let's go 0.12, so he's slightly higher. Don't know why that said 3, and then we'll leave that at 1. That's perfect. Okay, the next thing is moving him across. His X value needs to be 1.5, so he's smack bang in the middle. All right, what I'm going to do now is make a new material for him because I don't like the grass green. I want to make something a bit brighter. So we're going to call this green. We'll set the color to green as green can be, like that. Then I take away the smoothness, and then we take away specular. Chuck that on there. All right, and then we have our green health bar. And so the way this is going to operate is when the enemy loses health, we scale the pivot on the x-axis. See how I shrink that down, it looks like a bit of a health bar. If I zoom out, go over the top, there's our health bar. Now, obviously, it's way, way too big at the moment. Let me set that back to 1. So to fix that, click on the health bar and change all these 3 here to 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. Okay, that's a bit better. Might even be a little bit too big. Okay, might scale that down a little bit further, actually. Yeah, it's a bit more reasonable. Okay, we could even change. So if you want to scale the whole thing, just change the health bar scale. That's all you have to do. So like everything else, I'm going to drag it into prefabs. Bloop. Okay, and now what we're going to do is set up our script. So at the very beginning, every single enemy that's spawned gets its own health bar. So I'm going to delete the health bar in my world, like so. I'm going to go back to our script, which is over here. And up the top, we need to have 2 more variables, a public game object. I'm going to call it health bar prefab. And then a second one, which is game object health bar. So it's very similar to how the health and current health work, where I've got health bar prefab and a health bar. And the way that works, this is the prefab that every object is going to base their health bar off. And this one is going to be the health bar for just that one enemy at a time. Simple as that. So what we do at the beginning of the game is generate a health bar, and then everything that we do, like scaling the health bar and destroying the health bar, we talk to this guy. We don't touch him. We touch this one. Okay, so let's go back to Unity for a sec. I'm going to go to my small enemy, scroll down to the script, and in a few seconds, you should see the health bar pop up there. Okay, so to fix that, what we're going to do now is I'm going to drag the health bar prefab into that box, and then I'm going to hit the apply button at the top. And what that does is it actually means that every small enemy prefab now knows what its health bar is. Really convenient and really easy to use. So, and now we have to edit the awake and the hurt function slightly to include the health bar. So the first thing we need to do is create the health bar when the game starts. So to do that, we use the instantiate function again. In brackets, what do we want to create? The health bar. Prefab. Where do we want to create it? The second thing is the position that I like to do. The position is going to be the enemy's transform dot position. But if I just use transform position, it's going to put it smack bang in the middle of our enemy. So I want to put it a little bit above that. So I'm going to add a new vector 3, 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, 0.25 on the Z axis. So that pushes it forward and puts it above the enemy. Okay. After all that, I want no rotation on my object, so it's quaternion.identity. And then I want to attach the health bar to my enemy. So when I destroy the enemy, so the health bar gets destroyed as well. If I put a comma there, it says, what's the parent? Transform. Well, it's just transform. Okay, so I'm attaching it to the enemy who owns this script. Okay. The second thing I need to do is I need to capture the health bar so we can talk to it later on. And the way we capture it is use this guy up here. Health bar equals instantiate. Just like we did with the bullet, we had to capture the bullet so we could talk to it. We do the same thing. Now, as for the hurt function, if we don't die and don't get destroyed, by the way, the destroy will take care of destroying the health bar as well. We need to decrease the scale on that healthy pivot. But before we do that, we have to connect to the pivot, get its current scale, modify it, and then put it back into it. It sounds like a lot of steps, but with a lot of the stuff, you just have to do it. So I'm going to modify green scale to reflect the damage. So the first step is go and get the pivot object. So I'm going to go transform pivot equals health bar dot transform dot find, and then we put the name of the object, which was healthy pivot. Second thing we have to do is get the scale of that object, which is called a vector 3. Scale equals pivot dot local scale, like so. Now we have to change the scale, and we change it on the x-axis. So scale.x equals, and what I'm going to use is a mathf.clamp function. And what this does is we give it a value, and that value must stay between a minimum and a maximum value. So this scale, I want it to stay above 0, or sorry, above or including 0, and below and including 1. So 0 and 1 are the only values that this can be, and anything in between. Nothing lower, nothing bigger, is basically what I'm saying. Now, how do we do that? Well, we're first of all going to calculate how much health as a percentage do we have. So if I start at 20 health and I lose 5, that means I have 75% of my health remaining, or 0.75 of my health. Might sound a bit weird. What you do is you take the current health and you divide it by the overall health. That gives you the percentage of how much health you have left over. That's a very simple calculation. 0 is my minimum, 1 is my maximum, and it's as simple as that. Okay? And that way the health bar doesn't go stupidly big or stupidly small, because it's clamped within those two values. Now we have to put the scale back into the pivot. So pivot.local scale equals scale, like so. Yeah, we can actually test this. When we press play, it hopefully will generate us a health bar above that enemy, and we should see it slowly take segments out. I'll move my camera to about here. Hit play. Hopefully there's a health bar there. Yep. Oh, it's very small. Okay, I'm going to fix the scaling. I just realized that I used 0.3 because the enemy is scaled down as well. Let's go back to health bar. 0.3 on all those. I'm going to try it again. Hopefully that's a bit bigger. There we go. Simple as that. Right, so that's the health bar done. The next thing that we have to do there is get it so when the enemy dies, they provide us with a little bit of money. This one is not too hard, okay? What we have to do though is we have to create a script which is going to hold the overall amount of money that the player has. So what I'm going to do is go to scripts for a second, create one here, and I'm going to call it money. And open that up. Yes, sure, whatever. What is going on over here? Okay, that's a bit better. All right, and what I'm going to do is get rid of all this and even this on the end. Okay, so it just says public class money. I'm going to modify this line, in fact, to be public static class money. Okay. Excuse me. So this might seem a little bit weird that I've gotten rid of the mono behavior. Now, the mono behavior is something that Unity uses, so it's got functions like awake, update, start, things like that. And we have access to game objects and prefabs and all those kind of things. I take that away because I don't need it. I then put static because I only want one of these to exist at a time. The player can only have one set of money at a time. So I put static on it. Then we're going to have how much money we have right here. So I go public, static again because there's only one of them. Float amount equals 0f. Okay, that means they will start with $0 throughout the entire game. Now we don't attach this script to anything. It just stays here. It lives by itself because there's only one of them. And that means that any script in our entire game can talk to this one script just by using its name. Okay, in fact, we might start with 90. So later on, when we do some testing, we've got a little bit of money to work with. So now that we've created this, all you have to do is save it. We're going to go back to the enemy script and we're going to add a value to each enemy and we're going to increase the amount of money that the player has each time an enemy dies. So in here, yes, whatever. At the top here, I'm going to make another public variable, public float worth. And let's start at 4, because that seemed like a decent number to me when I did it. Okay, and that's just how much money they're going to get when we kill the enemy. If you go back down to hurt, right here where it's destroyed, just before it gets destroyed, I go money.amount plus equals worth. Okay, so when it dies, we increase the amount of money that the player has, then we destroy it. This is why I use the static class. It's so easy to write and it's so easy to look at. Okay. What you need to do is save that up, get that done, and it's time for us to get the enemy moving around the map because it's very boring them sitting in one spot and taking it in the face. Very bad sentence, but anyway. I just want to quickly make one adjustment to my map. I'm going to make that the entry point to my map down here. That was the original entry point for me. Okay, Mr. Small Enemy, can you please move over there? Stuck in the wall there. -2. -1.5. Nope, I need to go bigger. 2.5. 3. 3. Okay, so now we're sitting over there nice and comfortable. So the next step here is to make a movement system. Now the movement system in this game is going to be really, really simple. And it's essentially, we will lay out a very straight path that they're going to follow. You could get really complicated and get pathing algorithms involved in this and use things like an A-star algorithm where you could say, this is where my enemy starts, this is the goal. Can you please calculate the path that they can walk, the least expensive path, I should say too. But I don't want to do that because I think that's just a little bit too much. What I want to do is I just want to create invisible objects and they denote the path that the enemy is going to follow. And when we arrive at the first point or waypoint, they're going to be called, we then go to the second waypoint. So for example, here's where I'm going to put the first waypoint. Up there's the second, there's the third. Very, very simple stuff. Let me just collapse this environment again. I'm going to create an empty object. I'm going to call it waypoint. No capitals on it. I'm going to quickly change this little guy here so I can actually see the waypoint. Okay, let's make it nice and red and obvious. And what I'm going to do is on the end of it, just put bracket 1 bracket. Okay, and the reason I do that is because when I duplicate this waypoint, it'll automatically make the next one waypoint 2 and then waypoint 3 and so forth. So I'm going to put him down in this corner. I'm going to put him roughly where I want him. Now, height-wise, I think he has to be 0.5. If I remember correctly. Yep, 0.5. As for his position, we should be able to get away with 6 and -3. And you want him smack bang in the middle of that corner. If you've got it slightly off like there, the enemy's going to walk to this point before he moves up to the other one. You want it right in the middle so it looks like a nice smooth path that your enemy's walking across. What I'm going to do is I am going to tag this guy as a waypoint. Am I going to tag him as a waypoint? No, I'm not. I'm not going to tag him. I changed my code for that. But I am going to make him a prefab. Bloop. Might look a bit silly because this object really doesn't have much going for it. It's got a name and a position and that's it. But we're now going to create a script, and this script is going to be so simple. Okay, I'm going to create a C# script, call it waypoint. Simple like every other one of my scripts. And in this script, all I'm going to do is I'm going to ask what is the next waypoint that we go to. So I make a public transform. Okay, my Visual Studio is being a bit weird. Next waypoint. Okay. What are you erroring about? No, you're good. Okay, so all this variable here is for is when I'm in the editor, we're simply going to ask when the enemy arrives at one waypoint, what is my next waypoint? That's all that does. Okay, so I save it, drag it onto my waypoint once Unity's done loading. And you'll see that every single waypoint is going to have this value. I'm just going to hit apply so that goes to the prefab. Okay, and then we're going to start creating all our waypoints. Really simple. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did for environment though. I'm going to create an empty object, put it at 0, call it waypoints, like so. Drag waypoint 1 on it. Now we duplicate, and if you get the order correctly, then we can move them up, across, down, across, up, across, and so forth. So Control D, and you'll see it says waypoint 2. I'm going to hold Control like I did, and just move them into place. Whoa. Duplicate, gate, gate, gate. Okay. One at the bottom there. So they're all the waypoints done. So all I need to do now is hook up the waypoints and say that when I arrive at waypoint 1, go to waypoint 2 by dragging it into that box. Same thing for waypoint 2, drag waypoint 3 in that box. 3 goes to 4, so forth. Just hook all these up, and this is a really cheap, easy way of getting enemies to follow a path. Okay, and obviously you can change the way the path looks and how it's shaped, but they will walk in straight lines between the two different points. And we can leave number 12 alone. Save, collapse, and we've got our path ready to follow. Yep, that looks good. Can you please don't do that? Okie dokie. So what we need to do now is edit the enemy script so they've got behavior about following those waypoints. Now, we have to add a little bit more, another variable, and a lot more code, unfortunately. At the top, up here, I am going to go public transform. I could go game object, but I only want to know about its position, so transform is all you need. Call it next waypoint. And this is the waypoint that the enemy is going to walk to. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is quickly go back to the game, hook up the first waypoint to the enemy. So I'm going to go small enemy. Wait for it to appear here. Then hook up the first waypoint. So waypoint 1 right there. Okay? You don't have to hit the apply button because we're going to create a spawner in the next video, which is automatically going to deal with that problem here for us. For each enemy that's spawned, it'll set the initial waypoint for them. So because we're now moving an enemy, I like to always have, should have probably done this before, a movement speed. Okay, and I'm just going to set it at 1 to begin with, and you can modify that as much as you want later on. Okay, I just want to move speed because then I can control, some enemies can be really quick, some can be really sluggish, some can have lots of health and be really slow as well. So let us put in void updates again. I hate how it puts the private word. Let's be cleaner with that. What we're going to do is I'm going to create another, we're just going to basically move between the waypoints that we have. It's really simple to do that. We're just going to use the same thing we did with the bullet. We're going to use the move towards function. Okay, so we're going to move towards this next waypoint. Actually, next waypoint. That's probably a bad word. Let's call it current waypoint. Realize that's a really bad word. Let me make sure this is still hooked up. No, it isn't. Let's hook it up again. I just think current waypoint probably explains a bit better what it's doing because it's going to its current waypoint and then it'll collect the next waypoint when it arrives. Okay, so in update, what are we going to do? We're going to update or move our enemy toward the position. So transform.position equals vector3.move towards. What are we moving towards? Well, our current position is transform position. Our target is our current waypoint dot position. And the max distance delta is how quickly are we going to move. We're going to do move speed times time dot delta time. And there's our nice long line of code. So pause the video if you need to get all that. But that's it there. There's even a bit more on the left. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is check have we arrived to the waypoint. Now, this might be a little easy if statement in most cases where you go if transform position equals current waypoint dot position. So in other words, we've landed on the position that we want. Okay, we don't want to do that. We actually have to say, all right, if our X positions are the same, so our left and right, and our Z positions are the same, then we basically have arrived. Actually, we might be able to cheapen this a little bit. Let's go transform dot position dot equals in brackets current waypoint dot position. Okay, so if though the current position and the current waypoint are the exact same, that means we have arrived. Okay, now we need to check if we've got another waypoint. Do we have the next waypoint? Now you might think, well, yeah, every single waypoint had a next waypoint, but there was one that didn't, and that was the number 12 waypoint. It didn't have a next waypoint. So if we assume that every waypoint's got another one, we'll actually crash the program. So what I'm going to do is do a quick if statement. If current waypoint dot get component diamond waypoint. Don't know why you're not bringing that up for me. Dot next. Oh gosh, why is that not working? Waypoint's there. Okay, let me just quickly save and restart Studio. Being very, very weird. Okay, that's better. Okay, sorry about that. So what we're doing is we're connecting to the waypoint script that we wrote just before, and we're checking what its next waypoint does not equal null. So if there is a waypoint, if there is a waypoint, what we do is we go current waypoint equals, copy and paste time, copy, paste, done. So if it doesn't equal null, so in other words, if we have another next waypoint, that next waypoint becomes our current waypoint. And that means that the enemy will walk from to number 1, then to number 2, and so forth. So hopefully, if I've done this right, this little enemy will walk there and then walk up to 2 and just keep going in that order. Here he goes. Yep, and you can see he's still following it. So that's perfect. All right. So on that note, that actually brings us to the end of the video. And thanks for watching, guys. We've got part 4 in the next one, and we're going to be looking at creating our buying interface so we can get some towers and actually put them dynamically down on our level, start attacking our enemies that they come. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.